They're doing their podcast with popcorn today. Yeah. All right. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maggie Weiland, and I'm the director of the Entertainment Commission. And on behalf of my entire staff and commission, I wanted to welcome all of you to San Francisco's 12th Annual Nightlife and Entertainment Summit. Woo! Thank you all so much for being here today. I just want to give a very special thanks to 49 South Van Ness's Building Management for hosting our event today, as well as to SFGovTV for live streaming our event on YouTube. So for all of those that are not having their butts in chairs today, we thank you for watching online. I also want to thank all of my commissioners, some of which you'll be hearing from today, including President Ben Blyman, as well as Commissioner Laura Thomas. And I also just wanted to thank Vice President Dory Camino, as well as Lieutenant Dave Falzon, Laura Thomas, and Al Perez, who did all of our graphics for today. So thank you, Al. Another big thank you to all of my staff, Caitlin, Dylan, May, Andrew, and Mike, for all of the incredible work that they do every day and in preparation for today's event. Beyond that, I just wanted to call out a thank you to now former Commissioner Stephen Lee, who is here today, as well as Inspector Tony Savino, who recently left our commission and our staff, but were with us for 10 years and 4 years respectively. You both did incredible work, and we're going to miss you so very much. Today we're going to hear from local government leaders and industry leaders about current issues and efforts, and discuss ways in which the industry and the city can continue to work together toward long-term recovery. We're also here to reinforce the strength of this community. Nightlife and entertainment leaders like yourselves are strong and gritty. You're risk takers, you're creative and dynamic, and you understand more than most the power of gathering. Today is the first time we're holding our annual summit in person since 2019. And it's not lost on me how amazing it feels to see all of your faces here today. So thank you for coming. The past couple years have been incredibly challenging for all of you, but we're here to support you as we look ahead toward the future of nightlife in San Francisco. Our team will continue to focus our efforts on improving regulatory coordination and customer experience in all of our programs and processes, including preparing all of our eligible JAM permit holders toward the transition to a brick and mortar permit when the emergency program concludes. Our other goals center around strengthening our permit holders and workforce through education and training, promoting equity and equality in our industry, supporting affordable arts and entertainment infrastructure, and ensuring public safety and welfare through responsible nightlife operations. Some quick housekeeping items for today. The restrooms are located immediately to your left when you exit the conference rooms. There's coffee and tea back here, as well as cookies from Hot Cookie. So please do enjoy. Let's see, today's agenda, if we could bring that up on the screen. We're going to have one break after we hear from our esteemed opening speakers. You'll see the list there, but we're about to hear from Mayor London Breed, as well as City Administrator Carmen Chu, Assembly Member Matt Haney, Director of the Office of Small Business Katie Tang, and our very own Ben Van Houten from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. Also in store for you today is a live taping of the Fun Police podcast with Entertainment Commission President Ben Blyman and Small Business Commission President Sharky Laguana. They're going to be interviewing city economist Ted Egan on the state of the industry's recovery, as well as harm reduction is fundamental. This is a presentation on harm reduction as it impacts the industry and Narcan training to reverse an opioid overdose. Finally, when our agenda concludes today, we hope you can join us for happy hour at Anina in Hayes Valley. It will be a cash bar and all are welcome. Thank you so much to everyone for being here today, and thank you to all of our speakers and presenters for participating in this event. And without further ado, it is my great honor to introduce to you the mayor of our city and county, of San Francisco, Mayor London Breed.
Thank you, Maggie. And, I gotta say, it is so um, very different seeing all of you in the daytime. I'm used to, even when there have been summits in the past, there have been at nightclubs, and even the daytime, the nightclubs look dark. What is it about that? But I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad that you are all coming together to really talk about, what more can the city and county of San Francisco do to support and protect nightlife. As you know, I got busted in the paper on numerous occasions trying to have a good time at some of your venues. So whoever has a no camera, no cell phone policy at their nightclub venue, please let me know so I can go hang out there. And in fact, if you guys can send me a list of the bars and locations of where we can watch the Warriors game tonight and Friday, Maggie, you got to put up the list of places in San Francisco to go, where the TVs are, where the fun is, where the great food and drinks are. I mean, I bring up all these examples because what would we be without places to go to enjoy San Francisco? Whether it's at one of our many bars or restaurants or nightclubs and places all over the city. But more importantly, a lot of our various festivals and events and activities. And it's what makes San Francisco special. Luckily, Stephen is leaving the Entertainment Commission. Back in the day when he owned the Glass Cat, he used to let us in before we turned age 21. That ID looked nothing like me when you let me in that spot. But thank you for your service, and thank you for all the work you continue to do for the city, along with so many of you that are located here today. We know that this pandemic has really hit this community really hard. And of course, I, along with your former supervisor, Matt Haney, who parties way more than me, we were, of course, concerned about what could happen as a result of the pandemic because we couldn't connect in the same way. And that's what this is about. This is always the nightlife and entertainment industry of San Francisco is about nightlife and entertainment. It's about coming together. It's about hanging out. It's about those conversations and having a good time. And we couldn't do that during the pandemic. And of course, there was some serious concern about what that would mean. There were still people that you had to pay. There were still fees that you had to cover. And fortunately, working with our now Assembly member, Haney, not only did we waive $5 million in fees and taxes that this industry would have otherwise had to pay to the city and county of San Francisco, but we provided a $3 million recovery fund where we know 75 businesses of nightlife and entertainment in San Francisco were able to benefit specifically, especially because a lot of the resources that were provided through the city for small businesses weren't necessarily making it in the hands of the nightlife and entertainment industry. So we are so glad that it made a small difference. And we are so glad that as we begin to reopen our city, that many of the establishments that we know and love are still open, are still available, are still hiring the DJs and hiring the musicians to play live music. And the jams permit, which was a very creative idea coming out of, Maggie's suggestion. She was like, I want to have fun no matter what. But the jams permit that gave us the ability to provide resources and to hire artists to perform in various locations and waive some of our crazy city bureaucratic rules made a difference for so many musicians, so many artists who just needed an opportunity. And what we definitely need to do in San Francisco is make the ability to have fun easier, to make it easier, to make it less problematic. I mean, the laundry list of permits and fees and closures and all the things that you have to do just to create this incredible environment is not only time consuming, as I know Alex could tell you after his big 420 event, but also very expensive. And, we should be able to have the small block parties and small events from the large street shutdowns and other activities in the city. And I will continue to work with the Entertainment Commission to do everything we can to make sure we're making the right investments and the right changes to policies to make it easier for us to have fun again. I am really embarrassed that we are not as, the things that are happening in San Francisco are not as fun as what happened during the Roaring 20s. They have put us to shame. We should be dancing in the streets. We should be having a good time. We should be taking in the environment, concerts, activities. There's new parks, new activities. And so what I know is that means we have to make it easier for those possibilities. So we're counting on all of you. We're counting on you, to, of course, to make the brick and mortar establishments that you have successful, but we're also counting on you to go outside of that and to do more in the city because your expertise, people think it's easy to set up an event and coordinate and pay artists and the laundry list of things you have to do, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of commitment. And so many of you are committed to this industry because you love it like I do. You love being able to have a good time. You love seeing other people have a good time until, you know, they're hiding out at the lion's den and then they have to get kicked out because they were doing too much. But other than that, you love for people to have a good time, and that's why we're a part of this industry. So I really want to thank Maggie and the various commissioners on the Entertainment Commission. And I want to take us back just a little bit because I'm still very proud of the legislation I was able to get passed when I served as a member of the Board of Supervisors that didn't let people shut down nightlife establishments because, for example, they all of a sudden built this new condo establishment and then someone complained about noise and then all of a sudden the oasis is gone. And the ability to make sure people know that these establishments were here before you moved in, they were here before this building was built, and they're here to stay is one of the reasons why we love San Francisco so much. Protecting our nightlife, it's not just about the economic impact, it's about how it brings people together. It's about our excitement, and even though we may fight it out like Assemblymember Haney and I do on a regular basis, we could still come together at any club in San Francisco and have a good time. That's what this industry is about, bringing people together for the purposes of enjoying music, enjoying many of our extraordinary artists, our DJs, and people who make San Francisco exciting. And so as you talk today about all the possibilities and the things that I know we need to continue to do to make life easier for you in San Francisco, I hope you walk away with a feeling of enthusiasm, a feeling of excitement. San Francisco is starting to reopen. The Warriors are in the playoffs. The Giants are doing the best they can. And people are performing in San Francisco. We got parks opening and open space. We got all kinds of, I mean, Stern Grove is happening this weekend with Tower of Power and Too Short performing on Sunday. And when I think about all these wonderful things, they couldn't happen in any better place than our city. So let's continue to keep nightlife alive. Let's make sure the fun police does their job and keep the fun going. And let's have a great time as we open after a really challenging time during this pandemic. Thank you all so much for sticking with the industry and working so hard. So let's go have some fun.
Okay, isn't our mayor incredible? Thank you so much. All right, I would now like to welcome up our next guest speaker, my boss, the city administrator, Carmen Chu.
Well, I'm not going to lie, it's not easy to follow the mayor ever in speaking. And especially, I can't also lie, don't think I've gone out to a club in like a really long time. I don't know if folks know, I have a daughter who's just now 3 years old. And so I've just been at home. So come June 21, when they say they're going to give me vaccines for my little one, I'm going to be out there. So I can't wait to support all of you. I'm excited to be here today and to really support all of your great work. And I want to thank Maggie and her entire team for continuing to support this industry despite all the challenges we've had in the last 2 years. For folks who may not know, I grew up in a small business background. My mom and dad actually had a small restaurant. So I know it's really, really hard to run any kind of business in the city. It's hard to get the permits. It's hard to pay all the fees. It's hard to keep up with all the changing regulations. And if there's one thing that I'm committed to do at the direction of the mayor, is to try to make sure that as we think about all of our city functions, whether it's the Entertainment Commission or any of the organizations within my fold, is to just have one simple instruction, and that is, how do we make things easier for people? And that's it. It's really that simple. How do we make our city processes easier for businesses who want to invest and be part of our community and help our city thrive and really be that shining place that people come to and love to visit? And so it really is not more simple than that. And I think for Maggie, I want to thank her for really taking that in stride and continuing to do that. We'll continue to work with you to make sure our processes are better. We want to hear from all of you about how our processes are broken so we can fix them. And the other thing that you need to know also is that we're entirely focused, myself, Kate Sophis, who's here with OEWD, on how it is that we're going to revitalize our downtown, make sure that we continue to bring foot traffic into the city, make sure that we continue to support all of the conventions that come to the city so that they in turn can support all of you and our small businesses and go visit all of our nightlife that this wonderful city has to offer. So while I might not be out there with you partying, Mayor, I guarantee we'll be working hard in the office to make sure that all of these processes really help to support this vision. So thank you very much. And then finally, I do want to ask Stephen Lee to please come on up. Stephen. Now, the mayor talked about Glass Cat. Surprisingly, I've been to Glass Cat before, too. And honestly, I can't imagine and don't remember an entertainment commission or entertainment life without Stephen being in my ear. Whether it was a supervisor, an assessor, or any role I've ever been in, he has been in my ear about how it is that we support this industry. So I can think of no better advocate and person to give thanks to for your support, lifelong support, frankly, of this industry than you, Stephen. And as you move on to other responsibilities and roles, we just want to simply thank you on behalf of the city. Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Carmen. That was so lovely. All right, next up, our next speaker is Assemblymember Matt Haney, who is another one of our biggest advocates for nightlife here in San Francisco. Come on up.
Thank you, Maggie. I have to say that I think this is the first time that I've ever been to the daytime portion of this event. Usually I just get invited to the after party. So it's really an honor to be here with you all. It's an honor to be able to share our support as a city and now as your state representative for this industry and for everything that you all do and contribute to our city. You do have a very strong champion for nightlife in our mayor. And that's not only because, as you saw and she shared, she's been on the news celebrating. And also, I will say, I will admit here, I was at some of those events too, right next to her. They just didn't care that, you know, they were focused on her, but I was there too. And so, but she's been there for you all, not only in going to the establishments, but also for having your back throughout the pandemic. And before, and when she was a supervisor, she authored laws to support this industry and understood the value of it. So that's a huge opportunity for our city and for all of you to have such a strong ally, such strong leadership at the Entertainment Commission, on the commission, on the staff, to be able to advance this industry and what it means at such a critical juncture. The mayor and I came together to support the industry during the pandemic, authoring the Music Venue Fund to support over 75 businesses and make sure that folks were here after the pandemic was over to continue to thrive in our city. And it was really not only did we come together to author that together, but it was actually in many ways this community that brought us together. We had for some time when I was elected, often on the other side of things, we were sometimes not always in agreement on different issues. And when venues opened, we both were excited about it, and we found ourselves together there in places like the Black Cat, in places like Cayo that just opened. And those were the times when we came together that we were able to talk about things that we shared and started to get to work together more closely. And I think that's really a sign of what happens all the time for so many people in our city, not just elected officials, but for all of us, for all of our residents. We meet our friends at your venues. We meet our loved ones. We are inspired. You know, I spent probably every other day at my friend Anthony's spot, which has a great name in District 6, and got to see how he, in that moment when we weren't able to be inside, when we couldn't go inside to eat in person, we couldn't go work out in person, he just decided to do it all in one place, outdoors, and he's continued to grow on that and continue to thrive as we've come out of this pandemic. So I first just want to say thank you for everything that you all did individually and collectively to fight through what was, I think, the most challenging time for an industry that was already having a tough time. You all, I'm sure, took on a huge amount of debt individually. You had to make sacrifices with your employees, personal sacrifices. You know, you lost businesses in some cases, but you stayed alive and you came together and supported each other. And our city should be forever grateful to you for that. And now we owe you. I think we owe you to continue that work, to continue to make sure that we didn't forget what happened over the last few years when so many of our residents, I hope, recognize how essential you are to a city, our city, any community. As our mayor said, there is no San Francisco without nightlife. People come here, they live here, they pay far too much in rent to be here. They pay so much in hotels. Everything that happens here is because people want to have access to the community and the art and the culture that you all have created and continue to create. And so I hope that at this time we put to rest a few myths. One is, as I said, that we could possibly have a city without nightlife. We cannot. People will move, and they did, and now they're coming back because you've reopened. I hope we also put to rest that San Francisco cannot be a great outdoor city. The creativity led by the mayor and all of you to bring so many of your activities outdoors was extraordinary. And we have to build on that. People will go outdoors in San Francisco. It's not that cold. And they'll enjoy themselves, and they should. And there's a lot that's powerful about that and safe about that, and that our city really needs that. And in fact, we should reorganize a lot of the way our city is built to be able to allow for more of those outdoor activities. A lot of the negative stuff that we know about in our city can be actually confronted with positive, with music, with art, with people gathering outdoors. That's how we include and grow and prosper as a community. The last thing I'll say is I hope we've also put to rest that this community is not one that should be loud and strong and powerful in their advocacy. I think for a long time you all felt that it wasn't really your place necessarily to come forward, to demand things of politicians, to organize it for policy change. And you all did that and have become a true political force in our city. Ben and Sharkey and Dory and Maggie and Stephen, you know, these were folks that I called and called on me every single day, other day, on things that I needed to do to deliver for this industry and for this community. And it worked. We delivered millions of dollars. We delivered real policy change. Terrence has been doing this for years, and what he has built, the legacy of folks like Terrence who've been trying to and working to organize this community, that's now being fulfilled and grown upon and built upon for real policy change. So now I'm at the state, and I need your help there as well. And I hope that you will come and call upon me to continue to support the industry. A lot of the things that are screwed up and messed up and fucked up about barriers that are put in front of this industry are not just city and county, they're state. They're how you get permits and the alcohol and the taxes and all these things that we need to change. And one of the things that I hope that we can change together is Scott Wiener and I just announced that we are bringing back the 4 a.m. bill, and we're going to pass it this year. And what I hope is going to allow us to pass it is not because I'm there, but because you all have recognized and acknowledged your strength and want to be in that fight with us, with Scott and I, with the mayor and I, and that the people of this state have realized how essential you are to their lives, to their communities, and because of that, they better pass it and get it signed this year. So thank you for having me. I will also be at the after party because that's the part that I'm familiar with. And then I'm having a party at Lion's Den tonight. You all are invited. So, I'm serious, I am. And thank you, Mayor, for your kind words and for your leadership, and to all of you, to Ben, to Dory, to Maggie, to everyone who has been a part of leading this community forward at such a critical time. We're just getting started. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Assemblymember Haney. If you guys can't tell, I think the previous 3 speakers have had a lot of experience speaking in person in the last few years, unlike your girl. That's okay. All right, next up, I am very happy to introduce a friend of mine who I've worked with for many, many years, the new director of the Office of Small Business, Katie Tang.
Well, while Mayor Breed and Assemblymember Haney were at the nightclubs partying last year, I was at Department of Public Health fielding calls from the press about what she was doing there without her mask. But in any case, so nice to see all of you. I'm Katie Tang, and I started as the Executive Director of the Office of Small Business in January of this year, and really excited to be in this role. Just wanted to share a little bit about our office today in case you're not familiar with us. Truly we exist because there is too much bureaucracy in the city and it is too difficult to get things done. So we are really here, our team is here to help you, help entrepreneurs start, stay, grow in San Francisco. And our services range from helping you with just even getting started with your business registration, helping you fill out an application, all the way to triaging all the hundreds of departments you have to go through to get your permits completed, figure out your zoning, all the way to financial support or even connecting you with specialized advisors. And so we are technically a division under the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, otherwise known as OEWD. And our director, Kate Sophis, is here, as well as our commission president, Sharky Laguana. And so we're really here to help you. And just this year in April, we started with a team here at the Permit Center. So now we have 2 staff in our office who are here to help you, essentially serve as the expediters in government to help you get through our crazy permitting process. So please, please, please do call upon us if you ever need any help and you get stuck, and we'll work very closely with all the different agencies here, including the Entertainment Commission, to assist you through this journey. So that's something that's new that started. And also, of course, we're constantly engaged in policy advocacy. We also want to hear from you. So if there's anything that our office and our commission can help advance legislatively, or even respond to legislative proposals that could be harmful to this industry, please do let us know, because we also play that advocacy role and want to be there to support you. So the other thing that was mentioned, you probably have, many of you may have received a check from us, and as Assemblymember Haney mentioned, we administered the Venue Fund when it was launched in March of 2021, and thanks to all of you who participated in the creation of that fund. And over the course of 2 rounds, we're able to give out about $2.9 million to about 70 businesses in San Francisco, 70 venues through those 2 rounds. And so just really impactful, I hope, and to help keep our venues here in San Francisco. So with that said, I also wanted to put a plug on behalf of my colleague, Marianne Thompson from OEWD, who's been helping to organize Make Music Day in San Francisco. So yes, Tuesday, June 21st. Woohoo! That countdown is a little wrong because when we took the screenshot, it was a couple days ago. But it's Tuesday, June 21st from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. Free celebration, and first launched in 1982 in France. Fête de la Musique, and is now held on the same day in more than 1,000 cities in 120 countries. So really exciting. I am surprised it's finally just coming to San Francisco. And so we are welcoming all musicians, instruments of all types, singers, percussionists, anything. Any one of you, join us in welcoming summer through this event. And so we're really looking forward to having all sorts of performances and live music all throughout the city, whether it's the businesses, shared spaces, your backyard, the street corner, what have you. So again, really want to thank everyone who's helped to make this event possible. And maybe the website's too small, but basically makemusicday.org/San Francisco if you'd like to learn more. And you have in the room here a lot of experts who can help you if you have any questions on permitting. So with that said, thank you so much for participating, and thank you to the Entertainment Commission for all that you do. There was so much creativity that came out of this pandemic, right? Things that maybe couldn't have been done before. And so let's keep that creativity going so that we can keep all of you going. So thank you very much.
Okay, that was lovely. Last but very much not least for our opening speakers, I'd like to call up Ben Van Houten, who, where is he? He's so tall, hard to, is he behind me? Oh my gosh, there he is. All right, Ben, we love you so much. Thank you for closing this section out.
Hi, everybody. Is that better? Should I just take it out? Yeah, might as well. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today and great to be here in person again for another Nightlife Summit from the Entertainment Commission. I'm Ben Van Houten from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development, Business Development Manager, Nightlife and Entertainment Sector. It has been a real pleasure to work with all of you despite being in some really challenging, unprecedented, challenging times. I have a short slide deck. Can we? Let's advance to the next one. How about that? I'm not gonna reiterate what so many of our great speakers have already said about the relief programs that were created for the industry, but I think as a reflection of all of your hard work, all of you, and your advocacy and your organization and your passion, there was really unprecedented, not enough, but unprecedented levels of assistance dedicated at the federal, state, and local level to the nightlife industry for the first time ever, which is both a reflection of how bad things were and the level of need, but I think also a reflection of that long journey of advocacy and organization that dates back decades in San Francisco through the work of Terrence and others, the formation of the Entertainment Commission, all the way now to the present, where millions of dollars locally have been committed, and there are and federal programs, some of which were more successful at delivering relief than others, with the shuttered venue. I mean, $15 billion for entertainment venues at the federal level is just astonishing, just wonderful. While of course the restaurant fund, as an example of, we know that there is need beyond the resources, with $40+ billion in unmet need nationally for restaurants and bars injured by the pandemic. So certainly, the work is not done, but as a sign of how much has been accomplished over the last couple of years, I think it's really astonishing and a testament to all of you. Let's head to the next slide. Also, just to recap and look back, significant policy and legislative work at the state and local level last year in terms of the outdoor alcohol service expansion, to-go alcohol sales for restaurants, turning elements of pandemic programs into something more permanent, as well as some significant local legislation. The Small Business Recovery Act, yet another effort to streamline permitting and reduce barriers, often technical barriers that trap people or trip people up when they're well on the way to trying to open a business, as well as the Shared Spaces Ordinance and the First Year Free legislation, which waives permit fees for new business locations in San Francisco. Wonderful. Moving forward, so really the rest of my slides, I'm going to really keep this brief, but are really focused on what are some highlights, things that are happening right now, things to keep on the horizon in the future. So thinking about the outdoor space and how we are transitioning outdoor space from the pandemic programs to permanence. So number one, the Shared Spaces program is moving from the emergency pandemic program to the permanent program. The legislative program, I believe, is the preferred terminology. So applications for the legislative program are due November 1 of this year so that people can get permits for when the emergency program ends at the end of March next year. So really key, and hopefully, that we're working hard on outreach across the city to make sure people know this. But those are the key dates, the two key dates to keep in mind. It's November 1 to get an application in, and April 1 of next year is when the emergency program ends. And to that end, I know as Maggie had mentioned previously, the JAM permits will also need to transition to other Entertainment Commission permits, and that's possible in part because of the Small Business Recovery Act and Shared Spaces legislation, which are really working to preserve all of that great outdoor activity moving forward. And finally, and actually just got a question about this standing in the hall out there, ABC licensed premises, so those temporary catering authorizations, those are going to continue until after the governor ends the state of emergency, but certainly something to look out for whenever that happens as well. There is a whole bevy of state legislation under consideration that impacts this industry. I think that is a sign and a reflection of the fact that there is still significant need. People are making calls to have reform at the state level. In a couple of cases, so the Dodd bill to restore to-go alcohol sales for bars and alcohol delivery, again, restoring the rest of that pandemic era to-go and delivery program. Of course, the 4 a.m. Legislation that was recently introduced. Senator Wiener's SB 793, which would create a unique liquor license for music venues, which is really could be really game-changing for the state, that you could apply directly to ABC for a liquor license for a music venue. SB 298, which is about converting brew pub licenses, but was also amended yesterday, that actually could allow, I think, up to 10 new full liquor licenses in San Francisco. That's one to keep an eye on. And Senator Wiener led an effort that the city was involved in to support liquor license application modernization that was held in committee, but certainly an issue that we are continuing to work on, given those needs that we know you're all face there. Responsible Beverage Service Certification, the RBS program, this is something that we are working to get the word out to all businesses across the state, that under legislation that was adopted a couple of years ago, starting in July, and the deadline here is August 31st, all alcohol servers and managers in California need to be RBS certified. They need to take a training course from an accredited provider, and they need to pass an exam. That's all servers and managers, restaurants, bars, venues, statewide. I think that there is, to put it charitably, room for improvement on the state's outreach on this program, but it is absolutely something that we want to spread the word to you. We want you to spread the word. Does that wrap it up? 1 minute. Okay, very good. All right, I'm almost done. Next slide. Finally, we're really excited about the SF Live initiative. We announced it at the end of last year. This is $2.5 million in state funding, thanks to then Assembly Member, now City Attorney David Chu, to promote the local nightlife and entertainment sector through outdoor concerts, marketing and branding efforts. We are launching this year, and we will continue this program throughout 2023. More information coming soon. There was a long journey to get all the paperwork, to get money received from the state, but we have it now, and we are excited to launch this later this year. And I think that's my last slide. But I'm around, and it's a pleasure to connect with all of you, talk with all of you, learn from all of you. So thank you, and please keep up all the great effort to get this industry, keep it recovering. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I'm shocked that he made it on time. All right, everyone, we're going to take a quick little break until 3 o'clock, and so please just take the opportunity to, say hello to the person next to you, and feel free to mingle outside. There's cool little seats. There's coffee, tea, and hot cookie in the back, and we will see you at 3 o'clock.
You don't have Manny here, so like we gotta overcompensate.
Yeah, we have to.
by-
Yeah, this is a little much. All right, everyone, if you could return back to your seats, we're going to get this started.
There's some magic part where the theme music comes in.
I think so. I think that's Caitlin's job.
Oh, here we go. All right, welcome to the Fun Police. This is a podcast that Ben Blyman, Manny Yakudiel, and myself, Sharky, looking very boring in a suit, Laguana, that we do, and we have for the past, I don't know, year or so?
Something like that.
Yeah, we've been having a podcast. You can find it on all your podcast places, iTunes, Spotify, what have you. And we talk about the issues impacting the city. And all three of us are small business owners. Manny and I served on the Small Business Commission. He's now on the MTA Commission. Ben's on the Entertainment Commission. As you know, he owns a bunch of bars. And we talk about the issues affecting San Francisco. We get into the politics of it. We say things that are inappropriate, and then I have to edit them out later. That won't be an option today.
Yeah, of course not. I think at the end of the day, we kind of have a bent, and our bent is that it's not enough for a city to be clean and safe. It's important, don't get me wrong, but I've been to many clean and safe cities that suck, and one that comes to mind is Salt Lake City. That place sucks.
Why do you got to keep dumping on Salt Lake City?
Because they serve alcohol in those tiny little bottles. It drives me fucking crazy.
It's not real alcohol either.
Yeah, you can't even get a good IPA there. They're like, it's 2%, you know? Anyway, I don't like Salt Lake City. Good mountains, terrible nightlife.
There's nice people there.
Good dog. Why don't you move there, Sharky?
Have you checked out the TikTok, the Mom's a TikTok thing that's happening?
No, and I hope not to. So today we are going to be interviewing our guest, who is the esteemed chief economist of the city of San Francisco, Ted Egan. We've had a chance to have him in front of our commission and multiple times, and Sharky as well, and we always find his insight to be very enlightening. The goal today would be to hopefully for all of us to come out of here with some sort of better sense of what lays ahead of us after COVID in the city as it pertains specifically to nightlife. So that's what we're doing here. Ted, thank you for coming.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Nice to chat with you both.
We spent a lot of time working on our first question. It's really important. So just want to get centered on that.
This is important. So we've had many debates on this, and being in the position that you are, I think this probably is not the first time it's coming up. Are you a boxers or a briefs guy?
I've never been asked that question before.
Huh.
I've been a boxers
welcome.
guy for like 40 years, and I don't
knew it.
really, I never look back. Let's just leave it that way.
Pay up, Ben.
Manny owes me $5. All right, so first of all, just getting out of the gate here, getting a little more seriously, can you give us a sense of the economic impact that nightlife has had in the city of San Francisco, let's say before COVID? What were we looking at for the impact that nightlife had, kind of directly and maybe a little indirectly? Any sense of that?
Well, yeah, I mean, our office did a report in 2012 on nightlife, defining the industry for the first time, trying to measure it. We did a survey of businesses and in the industry and looked at how much they spent on other industries and how much they injected in the city's economy. And I think most interestingly, we surveyed visitors, and we learned about who are the customers of nightlife industries. And the conclusion of that report, which we updated a few years later with updated data, is it's a very big industry. I think there was something like 27,000 jobs in the city directly or indirectly supported by visitor spending in nightlife industries, not counting what local residents are spending supporting people in their neighborhood restaurants. It's a huge part not just of why people come to San Francisco and like San Francisco, it's a huge part of Bay Area. It's one of the main reasons people come to San Francisco. and that's part of our visitor industry, and it's a major part of what people do who are tourists coming to San Francisco. So it's part of what differentiates San Francisco as a place and makes it a place worth coming to and staying in.
So how do you measure that? So, I mean, we think about, obviously, there's core tax revenue that just comes directly off of these businesses. There's secondary impact of visitor revenue. So, people come to see a show or to visit. But how do you measure the sort of tougher to measure aspects of this, of just the sense of a city being alive or exciting and something that people want to visit?
Well, I mean, that's, I think, where the survey questioning comes in, and I'll just give you a point that I remember from that survey that was really interesting. We asked people who were not San Francisco residents, in fact, who were not even Bay Area residents, who we met in intercept surveys at night, what are you, why are you out in San Francisco today? And 40% of the people said, Golden Gate Bridge, Fisherman's Wharf, tourism. 60% of the people said to go to a restaurant, to go to a club, to go to an event at night. In other words, in just raw numbers, it's the things they do afterwards that accounted for people being out in the city. So again, I think it's an important, that's basically how to do it. You ask people to rank what's really drawing them to San Francisco.
And can you give us a general sense of what conditions should be existent in a city like ours in order to have a thriving nightlife? Like what are some of the factors that we know of that would lead to a nightlife that's strong and exciting?
Well, I mean, I think people who've worked in the industry have a better sense of it than me, and people who've lived in San Francisco longer than me would have a sense of it. San Francisco has a very strong nightlife industry, and it's tied to the history of the city. I mean, I think the number one thing that you need to have a thriving nightlife industry is a community of people who are making things fun at night, and that's artists, musicians. It's not just going to a chain restaurant and having a bottle of wine and dinner. It's all those unique things that you have in San Francisco that are really the legacy of people coming here for generations and doing bold things here. And that's very hard to replicate, but I think that's the most critical asset we have as a city.
I think we want to back up here for just a second, because I know many of these people probably are wondering, we have an economist. What does the economist do? What is your role in city government, and how do policymakers take what you say and put it to work?
By the way, there's an ongoing joke that Sharky always wants to go way back with explanations. So, if any of Sharky's questions are not something you want to hear, just give me a little look, and I'll make sure that we move on quickly past it. But I'll allow this one. I'll allow it.
Do we have a mute button for Ben? We need a mute button.
Impossible.
I'll try to answer this one quickly. In 2004, the voters passed a measure to create an Office of Economic Analysis with 2 economists, the smallest possible office you could have in the most economically sized office you could have in city government. And our job is to look at all legislation that's introduced by the mayor or the board of supervisors and determine if this would have a significant effect on the city's economy, and if it would, we write a report on that for them, for members of the public, for anyone who's interested. I've been doing this job for 15 years. We've written about 125 economic impact reports on really every major policy issue the city has considered in that time. We have also, I think, spend, certainly during the pandemic, a lot of our time tracking the city's economy, figuring out what's going on. In a lot of ways, the pandemic and the post-pandemic period are kind of strange new world for us, and so that's taking up a lot of our time as well.
Getting to the pandemic period, I think it would just be helpful for me. Can you give us a sense of how devastating it was on the nightlife industry specifically, or maybe not specifically nightlife, but small business? We're looking at how many jobs were lost. What are we looking at for back rent that's been unpaid? Things like that. Any things jump out?
Well, the back rent's a hard statistic to track, but an easy statistic to track is jobs. And right off the bat, industries like arts, accommodations, restaurants, bars dropped employment by 70%. And that sector, leisure and hospitality, which includes those sectors, is still down about 20, 25,000 jobs than before the pandemic. Growing really fast. Last month, no sector added jobs more than that sector. There's some good news recently, but still the hardest hit sector and still deepest in the hole compared to where we were before the pandemic.
So let's talk real quickly about what we can expect going forward. So my general gut feeling, and I don't know if you have the same one, but I just from being around is that we kind of cratered a few months ago or 6 months ago or something, and that I do feel like there's an uptick in the city. Certainly the numbers of hiring may show that. What do we see for let's say the next year in terms of getting back to some sort of new normal? And maybe follow-up question to that, how's the new normal going to be different than the old normal pre-COVID?
I think a year may be hard to look at with clarity. I think one of the things that's been encouraging, not just in San Francisco, but nationally in this industry, is how just juiced people are to travel and get out and do stuff. I mean, what we've seen with inflation in air tickets in the past 3 months, 18% inflation in 1 month, 10% the month before that, it's not stopping people. Like the airplanes are full. People want to get out and do stuff, and that's behind the rising visitor numbers and the surge that we've seen in hospitality and entertainment industries, not just in San Francisco and elsewhere. People are more happy that COVID is quote unquote gone than they are worried about inflation, gas prices, other prices, or anything else. If that powers through and they're just like, you know what, we're feeling rich and we're just going to spend, then I don't see any reason that the good news can't continue and we get to something that looks like close to normal, at least in visitor numbers, by the end of the year. We got pretty close just last month. But if we can sustain that for the next few months, that would be really good news. On the other hand, there's a lot of macro uncertainty. Inflation risk is rising. Recession risk is rising. Inflation is very high. It's only starting to tick down a little bit. And so that's really the question for a year out. San Francisco's recovery as a city has been pretty weak compared to the rest of the U.S. When the federal government and the Federal Reserve are kind of going into tightening mode, it's cities like us that I think are going to be hit harder because we've had the most fragile recovery. So as a good economist, I'm giving you two answers in one that contradict each other, but those are the things that's how I'm framing the uncertainty at the moment.
So when we talk about San Francisco's recovery trailing the rest of the country, and I'm familiar with those numbers, and by the way, Ted's economic impact report, it comes out every month from the Comptroller's office. You can find it in the news releases. It's must-read reading.
Nerd alert.
Yeah, okay. So for those of us that care and actually want to do something effective and not just shoot our mouth.
There's a great chess report that comes out every month from one of the greatest masters of chess of all time, and you mainline that one.
All right.
Yeah.
You've had your say. It's my question now.
All right, go on.
So now I lost my fucking train of thought.
Oh yes, success.
If as we think about San Francisco's recovery, that recovery has not been evenly distributed within the city. So we are, as a median, as an average, we're trailing behind other cities. But in some neighborhoods, we're doing okay. But in the downtown area, we are dramatically. I mean, it's really still quite far below what it used to be. And does that still remain the case?
Yeah, I mean, as far as we know, we have sales tax data through the end of last year. It's got a huge lag problem, but that shows a couple of zip codes in like the center of the city are above where they were before the start of the pandemic, which by itself is just bad because when you have like 15% inflation in 2 years and only a couple of zip codes are back where they were in nominal dollars, that's really weak. But as you're right, in the core downtown area, they're still down like 20% plus in inflated dollars. And that points to what's unbalanced about our recovery on a sector by sector basis. Nobody believes this, but the strongest sector of our economy in hiring is the tech sector. The tech industry has hired far more people, employs far more people than they did at the start of the pandemic, notwithstanding what they're talking about now with layoffs and so forth. But you would never know that because they're not coming into work. And because they're not coming into work, they're not buying lunch, they're not going out after work. A big source of the market for downtown small businesses isn't there, as well as the tourists. And that's really the reason why the downtown core is hit hardest.
So I want to talk about sort of second and third order impacts of that and the impact that entertainment can make on addressing this issue. So when we talk about not as many workers downtown, not as many visitors coming down, of course that naturally is bad for the small businesses that are downtown that count on those visitors, is bad for tax revenue that we get directly from both sales and gross receipts, and any, I think maybe there's payroll taxes too that the city benefits from at some point. But what seems to me, and I've always been sort of super concerned about this, is most of the city's tax revenue, like out of the $13–14 billion we get, my understanding is most of it comes from property taxes.
Yeah, property taxes is the biggest single revenue stream. That's right.
Yeah, so if, my other understanding is if buildings downtown remain vacant, if office buildings continue to not have as many office workers coming, then those building owners can go to the city assessor and under law, they can say this building is X percentage vacant and is not worth as much as it used to be. And that can actually wind up over time having a material impact, a significant, substantial impact on our tax revenue. Is that right?
Well, there's a risk there. The first thing I would say is that a lot of the vacancy, which is different than people not showing up for work, this is companies walking away from their leases. But what they're doing is putting it on the sublease market, and they're still paying the rent, and it's the tenant who's eating that cost, and so really the property owner doesn't have anything to complain about. Now, when that lease expires and they can't get a new tenant, then they have a reason to complain. We have, I would say, risk in the commercial office sector, and between that sector and the businesses that occupy those offices or used to occupy those offices, they pay a lot of the gross receipts tax. So that's sort of the 1-2 of the city's taxes. The work from home issue is a big issue for the city fiscally, but I don't think it's something we're going to see in the next year or 2 or 3. The office market is going to have a big kind of think about really, do people want to come back to work? Is this hybrid thing working? Companies have to see how this experiment is going. And right now, I would say there's kind of a big disconnect between what tenants say they want and what property owners are saying they want to give.
So this is the thread I want to tie between the entertainment industry and the hospitality industry and that problem that you articulate that could play out over a couple years. It's just one potential hypothetical scenario. It doesn't have to happen, and there are things that we can do to stop it. And the thread I want to tie is, you know, I remember you and I were both at an event where urbanist Richard Florida was speaking.
I was there too.
Oh, yeah, well,
Thanks.
nobody cared about that.
I think I was sitting directly across from you, Sharky.
Like, whatever.
The entire time.
So, you weren't really an important part of the event.
Yeah,
Ted and I were having
a moment.
a moment, yes. But, you know, Richard was talking about how cities revitalize. And he said that when cities become boring, even the rich people leave. And of course, when the rich people leave, so does all the tax revenue. And that every revitalization of every city that has ever happened has always been led by the arts. So doesn't that, well, I see you scrunching your face. You don't quite...
Well, Richard Florida is kind of prone to very bold statements. But I would agree in the context of San Francisco that he's onto something. Maybe not every city in history, but yes.
Oh,
Please
okay.
continue.
Not Salt Lake.
Not exactly.
No.
Yeah. Right. Well,
They banned arts. That's why. It's forbidden by law.
yeah. Well, the Mormon Church has a lot of nice books. You should
Don't
go.
get me started.
The choir, for example.
Yeah, that's art.
Yeah. Think about that choir. But I think the thread here is that an important link in protecting the value of downtown and protecting what makes San Francisco so special is the contribution that the arts and entertainment makes. And it really, it's like one of those inflection points in that it doesn't, I mean, it's a pretty sizable industry in its own right, but its impact is exponentially greater than the actual direct financial impact.
I agree with you. I'm first going to disagree in absentia with Richard Florida. San Francisco's economy doesn't hinge on making sure rich people don't leave. That's not what our economy is actually based on.
Thank God.
However, I would agree that particularly now, emphasizing the fun you could have in San Francisco, get out of your house and come to downtown San Francisco if you're an office worker, or just like if you're a tourist somewhere, come to San Francisco. You'll have an experience you can't have anywhere else. That message, which has always been true and which we've always said, it's more critical now to the future of the city because now those habits are being formed. And honestly, if 5 billionaires get that message, it's not as effective as if 500,000 workers who could be working at home get that message.
So this is kind of piggybacks off of that, but I moved here in 2003. It was kind of post.com 1.0 bust, and the city seemed to be, it was recovering and slowly, but it also seemed to be more balanced in terms of who moved here. I went to Georgetown University. All my friends were a bunch of very safe Irish Catholic, do everything by the book. They all moved to New York City. They all went into finance. And then it seemed to me that things shifted here when tech survived the 2008 crash. This became the place to go for every valedictorian in the land to get a high-paying job. And I personally, and I think a lot of people in this room, because I've spoken with you, noticed like a degradation of our social and cultural fabric that we had here, as we had a bunch of nerdos drinking boba tea coming in just mass numbers and buses here, buying up every
The boba
apartment,
tea didn't come till later.
displacing everyone. But so the question I have is, we've seen a bunch of people move out of the city. Obviously, a lot of those people, unfortunately, are people who can't afford to live here. But a significant portion of them, at least in my understanding, are kind of that valedictorian class who decided they could get a bigger house somewhere else. And I'm wondering if there's any hope for us to get back to a more balanced. You talked about we were kind of imbalanced a little bit. Is that a hope? Is there anything we can do to bring that back?
Well, I'll answer with a personal anecdote too, because I moved to San Francisco in the same year as you. But I had lived in the Bay Area, in the East Bay, before then, and I only moved to this side of the Bay in 2003. And it did feel balanced that time. Like you could walk around and see for rent signs on apartments, where in neighborhoods where you wanted to live. But I knew, because I lived in the Bay Area, that I was living kind of post-hurricane. And the hurricane was the first wave of techies nobody liked that came to San Francisco. And in 2003, everybody was saying, thank God that's over with, and that'll never happen again. And now San Francisco's got back to normal. It was less than 10 years before we were in another wave. It wasn't really balanced. In fact, all of those techies just lost their jobs. They didn't move out of San Francisco. They like San Francisco. They're part of San Francisco. They've been living here longer than I have by this point.
They're cool.
Yeah.
They're fine with me. It's the new ones that...
I think that to answer the first part of your question, the city's got a long-term kind of... People in the city have got to recognize that part of living in a city is chaos. And part of chaos is people you don't necessarily like sharing the same space as you, even though their values are different, even they have more resources. And the city just needs to grapple with that future. People really did think tech is going to go back to Palo Alto and never come to San Francisco again. I don't know if people think that now, but if you do, it's wrong. Right? Tech is here to stay. It's the driving sector of our economy. The only thing is, are they going to stay here and be in their house coding and in their pajamas, or are they going to come and sort of create economic activity for other sectors of the city economy, like the one we're talking about?
I mean, for entertainment community and small businesses, there's only really one right way to think about tech people. They're customers. and you should be selling to them and getting them to come as much as possible.
I didn't mean to besmirch the good people in tech, by the way. That may have come out a little bit harsh. I just felt like it became a monolith, and the monolith was monocultural, and it kind of went against what you were saying, which is that we want this place to be a melting pot of a lot of different people. You know, I want bike messengers, and I want carpenters, and I want teachers, and I want firefighters, as well as a healthy tech sector. But is that
So
that
let
a
me
pipe
now
dream?
answer your question, and I do actually have a slide. Caitlin, if you can pop up the last of the slide. So we've been looking at the demography of who's been moving in and out of San Francisco before the pandemic and afterwards. And I'm going to apologize off the bat because you probably, maybe if you're way in the back, look on the side, maybe it's easier to read. I looked at by occupation who moved into San Francisco in the years before the pandemic. That's the blue dot. And contrary to what a lot of people say, in virtually every occupation, the number of people living in San Francisco increased. Like we had an increase in people in sales and food prep and office support and construction, and only a few declined, and it wasn't much. The red line, the red dot is the same occupation in 2020, and you can see the city lost a lot of people in 2020, a lot more people in 2021 we don't have the data on yet. We particularly lost managers, the first group, computer math people, business ops.
Nobody is crying about those people.
Right? Business ops and financial, but look who else. Arts, design, entertainment went from about positive 500 to about negative 2,500 in 1 year.
I would identify that as a problem.
Right. Office and administrative support, they moved out. But then so did transportation. So did food prep and serving. Really, the story of San Francisco's change since the pandemic is the kind of specialized occupations that our two big industries need to be successful. Food prep workers, hotel workers, artists in the experience, hospitality, entertainment sector, and then computer people, business people, managers, and the office people. They're the ones who moved out. Oh, and look who moved in? Basically no one. There's a little bit of growth in community services, went from about negative 200 to positive 200. A little bit of production, manufacturing workers, about the same. A little bit of building ground maintenance, that's probably just a margin of error. But again, when the two biggest industries of the city's key people move out, the whole city drops. And that's the thing. It's not like if tech goes away, everything else blossoms. Tech is like the bottom of the food chain, not the top of the food chain.
This doesn't seem like a really complicated problem, though. Isn't it this just a function of housing costs being insanely high? And
No, I think this is two things. The arts, entertainment, tourism side of this is just we don't have any customers, we don't have any money, and we can't afford to be here. We've lost our job. So that is kind of tragedy-driven people moving out of San Francisco. The tech side is like, we have tons of money, we're hiring a lot of people, and I'm moving to Tahoe for the year. And maybe I'll come back, maybe I won't. So it's those two different things that drove the city's change so far.
So I just want to bring this back to nightlife. So first of all, let's pretend you had a magic wand and you could make things change in an instant as it pertains to our thriving community and people here. So that's the first question. What things would you change? What would be the main things that you focused on?
I would magically change people's perceptions about how much fun you can have in San Francisco and what your experience will be. I think you need customers. That's the main thing.
Got it. And that's it. Not affordable housing, or housing that is affordable for people, not the quote unquote affordable housing. But
I think broadly, if I could wave a gigantic magic wand that could really do anything.
that is what he offered you.
Okay, San Francisco would have a consensus about the role of growth in achieving the kind of balanced city that it wants to have.
got it. And then my second question is, oh, by the way, we're gonna open things up for about 5 minutes to audience questions before in our final segment. So start thinking about anybody. We probably have time for 2, maybe 3. So if anybody has a pressing question, start thinking about it. Ben Van Houten, you're not allowed to, because whatever you ask, nobody will understand. Only the 2 of you will understand. So if you owned a venue in San Francisco, if you owned a club or a nightlife venue or a bar or restaurant, what would you be focusing on right now? What advice would you give to them as somebody who's not outside of the industry, but just from where you're sitting to look for the future?
What would I try and do, or what advice would I give?
Let's do the second first.
I mean, you guys know more about the industry than me. I'm looking at data, and I'm worried about labor supply. And I'm not just worried about it right now. I'm speaking of affordable housing. I'm looking at the people who left, and I'm wondering how we're going to get them to come back, because rents are down, but they're only down 11%, and that's not going to let a food prep person afford housing.
Yep.
Now, wait a second. Let me ask a related question here. We're seeing data on people moving out of the city. Are we seeing data on vacancies in the city going up?
No, but that's not great data. And also, this is only data through 2020. All of 2021 is sort of
how come you said data in one sentence and then data in the next? Is there like
I don't know. I think I was following up.
Okay, I thought maybe if it comes after a word that ends in a consonant or something, you say data.
There's no complicated.
Some of us are Star Trek fans. Yeah. Some of us.
Nerd alert.
What would I do if I was in the industry? I mean, probably not do very well because I don't know anything about the industry.
That's all the time we have today.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. What can we expect going forward, though? Like, how can we align ourselves with this new future, other than just maximizing the fun that we put out there for people to have?
I think the things that are going to drive the industry a lot in the next little while, compared to other places, are the labor issue and the lack of customers. And so I think it's about being efficient with labor, thinking about your hours, thinking about your product, and being kind of lean and mean.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the scenario if we don't have a recession. If we do have a recession, it's it could be challenging as well. Although the labor issue may get easier. And
we can. I do want to get to audience questions, but what
we still have some time.
Okay, I don't want to end on a total sour note. What gives you hope?
What gives me hope?
Future?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, the thing that gives me hope, the thing I was talking about before, is, San Francisco really does have a capacity, I think, for renewal. I don't think that even if we go to a world where people spend less time in the office, and even if the world as a whole has too much office space, I don't see San Francisco losing office space. I think they will find out a way to fill the space with more people part-time, and that the city will basically, after that adjustment, continue to grow as it has in the past. I mentioned that I think tech is here to stay. The tech industry as a whole, I think, is still early in its growth period as an industry. We're clearly, as a country, the global center of it. The Bay Area is clearly the center of the U.S. tech industry. San Francisco is now a bigger center than Silicon Valley. All of the economic fundamentals in San Francisco are strong. I know this may seem kind of abstract for running an entertainment business, but it's sort of the overall strength of the economy in the long term here. I wouldn't trade it for any other city in the world, to be honest.
So let me paraphrase that.
Okay.
I think we heard the mayor said it, you said it, we've been saying it for a long time. San Francisco needs to be a lot more fun.
You just said that. I heard you say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is NBC still here? Let's
Play
get
the
that
tape.
in print.
Yes. San Francisco needs to be more fun.
Okay.
Being fun is critical to San Francisco moving into the future with success. Entertainment is the lever to make that fun happen. I'm looking at all you guys, and I'm thinking about Nancy Pelosi has this thing that she says to people sometimes, which is know your power. You, collectively in this room, the power that you have to transform and launch San Francisco into the future is just jaw-droppingly, astoundingly immense. And you've heard it from the economist, you've heard it from the mayor, you've heard it from the city administrator. Now you're hearing it from
These
Ben.
two studs up here,
Yeah.
three. Sorry.
Looking sharp. But you guys are what's going to make the next version of San Francisco happen. And we have to collectively
make sure that you have the resources, and in particular, as Ted was just saying, make sure you have the labor pool to make that leap into the future. Does that sound right
Yep,
to you?
that's exactly right.
Okay.
Wow, that was strangely inspiring coming out of Sharky Laguana's mouth, but I'll stand by it. Very well done, sir. Let's open things up. Does anybody in the audience have a question? We got a roving mic. Are there any? We got one from Mr. Mark Rennie.
There is a mic to your right over there.
Oh, yeah, you can. Sorry, you have to walk up. I thought they'd hand it to you, Mark.
I don't want to rain on the parade, but Jamie Dimon last week, he's the CEO of the largest bank in America, J.P. Morgan Chase, said there's a economic hurricane, and his bank is preparing for it, and you should too. Then about 3 days later, Elon Musk, who's always pretty positive, says he's letting go of 10% of his workforce. And I think the macro forces are what I'm worried about. And are you guys looking at that, and what is the city going to do? Are they doing any preparations for the fallout of a 2008 plus sort of scenario?
I am looking a lot at the macro risk. I don't see the risk of a 2008 kind of financial crisis. I think when people talk about a recession, which maybe a third of economists think could happen next year, probably not this year, they're probably thinking about a mild recession caused by too much Fed tightening if the Fed is trying to keep inflation under control. Not just that has a fiscal impact on the city, but also the fact that we've been relying on a lot of federal support, which is going away. And our economic recovery as a city hasn't been that strong. So, I mean, I think to answer your question, yeah, we're trying to stay on top of those issues. You know, famous CEO opinions are data points, but I think that the consensus of most economists is not as dire as what Mr. Musk and Mr. Diamond were pointing at, but we could be wrong. They could be wrong.
Before the next question, we left something out that I think is really important, and I think it would be foolish of us not to bring it up. How important are feelings of safety and cleanliness to the overall return of people to San Francisco in your mind?
I mean, I don't have any data on it. I only have the same anecdotes everybody else has and the same experiences everybody else has, but I wouldn't discount it for that reason. I mean, the thing is it directly goes to all of the weak spots of the city's economy. What are the hotels saying? What is SF Travel saying? This is a huge issue with getting people. Well, that's half our economy. What are the commercial office people saying, and what are the companies saying? People don't want to come to San Francisco because they're worried about safety. There's the other half of the drivers of our economy. So, I mean, who am I to discount that just because I don't have any actual data on it?
Got it. Thank you. And I know there was one more audience question. If there is, step to the mic. Oh, go for it, Michelle.
Walking up to the mic, Michelle Delaney, 311 Minna.
Yes. Long-time listener, first-time caller. First, I'd like to say I'm from Utah, so I know there are cool things coming out of there.
I'm so sorry to hear that. My condolences.
Just FYI.
Yeah, there was a cool punk scene in the 80s in Salt Lake. Don't even go there.
Secondly, I'd like to just ask a question. You know, should we or have we survey the tech community to know what they want? You know, I would really like to know what they want. I've got some great art for sale, you know, and I'd like them to buy it. So, you know, finding out what they want. We have so many amazing entrepreneurs here, and helping get our clubs and our places prepared to bring them in. I remember back in the day, I would have some techies come over and be like, hey, take me to a cool show. I'm like, okay, I'll take you over to the bottom of the hill. You know, and so we need a centralized place for them to see what's going on, and we also really need to know what they want, so we have it to offer.
Thoughts?
Well, I agree with that completely. I'm not sure the city in the middle of that conversation makes it work better, but I certainly think that you're the supply, they're the demand. That readjustment's a good thing.
Commissioner Stephen Lee accomplished so much in his tenure, but he never quite got us to create a centralized calendar of events administrated by the San Francisco City Hall government. Yeah, he tried hard, but yeah.
Our commission got a survey done.
Nice.
Yeah, so, and just putting that
Well
out
done.
there. We have time for just one more question. Go ahead, sir.
you mentioned that the tech sector is a very strong job creation in the city. But let's not forget, we invited the tech sector by giving them breaks, especially Twitter. Why can't we do the same for other industries that we think should come to San Francisco, that create jobs, that can create lunchtime using the restaurants and cafes, and any other things that you think might be more productive, just like what we did for the tech sector?
It is true that we passed the central market, payroll tax exclusion that Twitter and some other big companies took advantage of. I think that was a very unusual situation in which the way it was structured and the fact that the one big company that it affected was halfway out of town and was already a major taxpayer. You could make the argument, if you really believed that Twitter was going to leave without that tax cut, that the city saved money by keeping it in the city. That's, I think, a debated point, or maybe people have stopped debating it. But I think that that's a little bit different than sort of a flat-out tax cut for a particular industry. We've done it in the past. We gave biotech a tax credit. We have a biotech industry now. So I think that, that's a conversation people could always have. Do we want a different economy? The thing I come back to in that is it's very rare or it's very difficult for the city, given how people think the city taxes are really high. But if you actually look at your tax businesses as a bill, you're paying tons more to the federal government and the state government. And if the city said, this industry, you no longer have to pay any city taxes, it really wouldn't mean very much in the context of how much labor costs in San Francisco, how much rent costs in San Francisco. It's not a very powerful lever that the city can pull for economic development reasons generally, and of course it puts a big hole in the city's budget. That tax cut did not really bring the tech industry to San Francisco.
Wait, it totally revitalized mid-market. Now it's a beautiful place that we all want to hang out at.
Okay. At its peak, mid-market had maybe 30 tech companies with maybe 5,000 people working in them.
I go out on 6th and Market all the time. It's fantastic.
Okay. I'm not saying it doesn't have any charms at all.
Well, I'm buying fentanyl.
Okay. Yeah. But, the tech and mid-market was probably...
edit this out, right? Like,
I'm so
can't
sorry.
edit it.
I retract my former statement. This is an official event, and I apologize.
The mid-market was kind of... The tech industry there had an impact on the neighborhood, but the neighborhood was always a small part of tech in San Francisco. The overwhelming majority of tech companies that started or moved to San Francisco did not get a tax break. They came here kind of despite the business costs because of the value that they had of hiring people who live and work in San Francisco.
All right, so when we do our podcast, which you can find on your favorite podcast listening platform.
Smash that like button.
Spotify, iTunes, what's the other place?
Yes.
Apple. Oh, it's just Apple. Okay, showing my age. When we do our podcast live, we always have a segment at the end. It's called One Fun Idea. And so because I can't actually play the little jingle, I'm just going to pause here for a second, and we're just going to imagine that the jingle is playing. Can you sing it? Well, there you go. So the premise of this is we ask our guests, can you come up with one fun idea that would make San Francisco better? And it can be a rational, normal idea. People have talked about having more silent discos in the park.
Daytime discos, yeah.
They can be crazy, wild, completely implausible ideas.
My idea is a casino at Fisherman's Wharf. Please, can we put a casino at Fisherman's Wharf? It could float. It's fine. It can float.
We've talked about a zip line from Coit Tower to Salesforce Tower. That could be really exciting. So point is, one fun idea. What is one fun idea you have, Ted Egan, that would make San Francisco better?
Well, last weekend I took my kid to a birthday party at the Adventure Park in Berkeley, which, if you don't know that, is like a scrapyard for children where they nail things and build things. And The
I
basic
thought it was a
idea-
scrapyard where you go and get pieces of children discarded. Go on. Sorry, I was like, whoa, this is getting real.
I apologize for creating that misperception. But my fun idea is we should have a larger, all ages, city focused adventure park in San Francisco, in which you would have essentially the materials for like a scale model of San Francisco. And you could build buildings, and you could build trains, and you could build tracks.
Like using like
materials,
blowtorches
wood,
and
nails.
welding and things.
Yeah,
Yep.
there are liability issues, but this is an out-the-wall idea.
This is one fun idea, not here.
I mean, they actually have this in Berkeley, so there are cities that can do this. And basically it would be an invitation to create, recreate. Every day you come in, you can tear down what they built and build your own thing for an ongoing conversation about what's the built form of this world that we want. What do we want to build? What do we want to live in? What do we want to use? And it would be an opportunity of like a living museum of the city that we're in.
God damn it, that's a really good one fun idea.
I'm glad no one's taken it yet.
I'd
I
go
mean,
there.
there's nothing nothing to
Sharky wanted to build a skate park, like a world-class skate park in Golden Gate Park. There's no reason these two things can't be
You
kind of
could put your
near
skate
each
park
other,
in my
around
adventure
it.
park.
And
have the kids build the skate park.
Yeah,
no
nothing could
liability
possibly go
issues.
wrong.
Yeah, like nothing could go wrong. I'm going to share one other fun idea, and this one's a little ties into the entertainment community. Carmen Chu, the city administrator, and I were just chatting right at the start of this event, and I was telling her, we have this one fun idea, and she says, "Oh, I got an idea." I said, "Carmen, what is it? What's your idea?" And she says, when people visit the city, they come in through transit, and the first thing they see when they come out of the transit station is, it's almost, sometimes it's like a war zone or dystopian nightmare. She says, what if we could create an experience that was musical, that there was entertainment, that like you were starting to experience the vibrancy of San Francisco, as you were leaving the train and as you were going up. And I thought, I really liked that idea.
airports, yeah, great.
Put disco balls in BART station.
Yeah, well,
I have to say, when I got into Muni this morning, there were 4 children playing a classical quartet, string quartet.
I know that group. They're great.
Yeah, they were very good.
Yeah.
everyone, thank you so much for bearing with us and listening to this here. You can check out the Fun Police on your podcasting devices. Chief Economist Egan, thank you so much. That was a really interesting conversation. I really appreciate your time.
It was my pleasure. Nice to chat with you both.
That's
Great.
it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
All right, everyone. Hello. Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick 5-minute break before the last presentation. I think all the cookies are gone. I'm so sorry. Can I please also just call up to the front the remaining commissioners? So Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Falzon, Commissioner Camino, if you could come up here for a minute. And we will start again in 5. everyone. We're
everyone. It's hard to top the entertainment value of a live podcast episode, but when in doubt in San Francisco, go to your drag queens for entertainment. So we're doing one better than a live podcast. So I'm Laura Thomas. I am very proud to be a member of San Francisco's Entertainment Commission, and I sit in the public health seat on the Entertainment Commission, and so I spend a fair amount of time thinking about the intersection of public health, public safety, entertainment, and nightlife. And one of the issues that sort of routinely occurs in that intersection, I mean, for the past 2 years, we've had to navigate public health issues around COVID in nightlife, and obviously there's been a huge conflict between what keeps us safe and what keeps us entertained in many cases. One of the other areas where public health and entertainment and nightlife intersect is also around substance use, harm reduction, and whether that is legal drugs like alcohol and cannabis, which are obviously a mainstay of our entertainment and nightlife industry, or illicit substances. Obviously, you know, since the beginning of entertainment, people have figured out that combining music and entertainment and dancing with substances makes everything better, which is great until it doesn't. So for one of the issues that we've been talking about for some time at the Entertainment Commission is issues around harm reduction and how do we keep our staff, our audiences as safe and healthy as possible, and in particular, alive. And we are currently in San Francisco, in this state, in this country, in the middle of a significant crisis around drug overdose, accidental drug overdose. It's the leading cause of accidental death in the United States, the leading cause of accidental death in California. We're losing over 100,000 people in this country every year. In San Francisco, we're losing about 2 people a day to accidental drug overdose. And the thing is, you know, this is what I do in my day job, is work on how do we have policies in place that keep people healthy and safe. How do we reduce the harms related to substances, legal and illegal? And the thing is that overdoses are preventable, overdoses are reversible, overdoses are survivable, but it depends on somebody being there with the ability to call 911, to provide immediate aid and assistance, to help take care of people, and in the case of opioid overdoses, to use naloxone to reverse it. So how many folks here have lost someone to an overdose, a drug overdose? And I also noticed today is Prince's birthday, who's one of the many, many, many artists that we tragically lost to a drug overdose. How many folks here are familiar with naloxone, have naloxone, have used it, stock it in your bar or venue? Fantastic. Well, we're gonna, you know, what we're going to hear from some folks who work in and participate in nightlife and entertainment to talk about why they are bringing education to their audiences and to staff in bars around naloxone and overdose awareness. And you know, one thing in particular that I want to note, you know, there are a number of different venues that have been doing this. We're going to hear about, I think, Oasis and Aunt Charlie's, El Rio and the Stud are two other ones that were sort of early adopters of harm reduction. These are all, mainstays of our queer nightlife, and queer nightlife has a long and proud history of stepping up when the health and well-being of our community is at stake. And so, for example, putting condoms out in gay bars, the money that our bars and venues have raised over the years to help people living with HIV, promoting HIV prevention. And the next iteration of this is around overdose prevention, around ensuring that if people are going to use substances, that they're able to do it as safely as possible and get home alive at the end of the night so that they can go out and enjoy our nightlife again. So with that, I'm going to introduce Cochina Rude, who is a performer at Princess at the Oasis, and Carla Kleins, who's with the Transgender Pilot Program through the Community Behavioral Health Services of the San Francisco Department of Public Health. And I'm going to ask both of you sort of what is it that you're doing around overdose and education, and why?
Thank you so much, Laura. Hi, my name's Cochina Rude, and I'm a drag queen. I'm so happy and proud to be here. And Laura, I just wanted to say I've looked up to you for a long time, so thank you so much for having me. So like you were saying, so I work at Oasis nightclub every Saturday night. So I'm a co-host of a program there called Princess. It is like this wild drag extravaganza. We've had Carla actually perform there as well. She's brought the house down. You should see her sometime. She's fabulous. And so something that I started doing last year is I started to provide Narcan and, oh, thank you. I started to provide Narcan and also a quick 5-minute kind of crash course with our audience on how to use it and how to identify an overdose. We haven't missed a week so far since we started doing it, and I'm happy to say that it's started to snowball into bigger things, which is what leads me here today. So thanks again for having me.
Of course. And Carla, why are you educating folks about overdose?
Well, first I experienced the death of some of my friends using the fentanyl by mistake or by choice. And after that, the health department comes with some kind of grant where they include us, the drag queens, as part of that grant to do this type of intervention that I think is very important, because at some point of the night, people need to talk to us. And everybody's life, kind of. So it's very important to training people about how to prevent death. And it's that what we're doing, we're including that during our shows. And that has been working very, very, very good. People, on the beginning, people are not very receptive to the information. But after you mentioned that you have the really equipment that they can prevent somebody to die, they start talking to you and they are more welcome to learn more about what is this about. So I think it was a great idea from the health department to come with this grant that includes the people that we are living at nighttime and is where the overdose cases happens.
And so what has the impact been? What do you hear from people after you've trained them? Do you hear back that people have reversed overdoses? Are they appreciative?
They're kind of afraid first to talk about this fabulous thing that is the Narcan. And after they hear the presentation that we do, they kind of try to talk to you, like they don't want to be kind of in the spot because it's a lot of stigma about the use of Narcan. But after that, they come back maybe the next week or couple of weeks later, and they decide talking to you before we start our shows, and in the way that we provide them the Narcan for them to take home. So sometimes it's very popular, asking for a Narcan, and sometimes people, they don't want to get it, But after that, they come back and get it, yeah.
I'd say that at the nightclub where I work at, the reception is mostly positive. It's usually someone wants to, talk about it with me after the show is over. But kind of like Carla was just saying, it's kind of more of a one-on-one type of conversation due to the stigma of using drugs and it's in nightlife settings, et cetera. And, I'm pleased to say that there have been times when participants or audience members, people who return to the club, have come up to me and said, hey, that Narcan you gave me a few weeks ago, it ended up getting used at a party, or I gave it to someone who, needed it more than I did. And that's something that I want to encourage people to, just remind them that it's not supposed to just sit on the shelf. It is supposed to be used. So, if not just for them, and it also kind of gives people an out so that they don't out themselves as like, oh, I'm using drugs in the bathroom tonight, so they can, if there's someone in your life, a family member, et cetera, then you can get it for them as well, so.
And have you gotten any pushback from venue owners or managers about talking about drugs from the stage?
I didn't experiment that. No, everything has been, we are very welcome to speak for a little bit. And it's not that much like an open conversation about the drugs, It's more about like, we know that happens in the bars. And they try to keep that kind of confidential, so we try to keep it in the same line, try to do things like that.
To my surprise, there actually has been a lot of positive reception with the bars that I have worked with. So like recently I did a series of trainings with bar staff, management owners, bartenders, security personnel, et cetera, at various bars and clubs in the South of Market neighborhood with the LGBT leather district. And so, I was expecting there to be some pushback from, not necessarily bartenders or management, but from owners of these clubs, under the impression that, oh, well, we're condoning drug use, right? There is always kind of a concern of liability that I encounter, but it's not usually met with a significant amount of resistance, at least now. I think that maybe a few years ago, before fentanyl was such a hot topic, I think it may have been different. And there's, the Dope Project put together a template of like a letter that is specifically targeting bar owners and club owners to inform them that they can rest assured that they're not going to be liable if something goes wrong in their club, because the only thing that will go wrong in their club is if they don't have Narcan, right? Or if they don't respond the way that, we're encouraging them to.
Like in my case, I kind of covered the Tenderloin area, that maybe the overdoses doesn't happen inside the bar, but outside the bar there is a lot that you can see. Especially after COVID, these streets have been changing a lot. It's so dirty, and people are dying on the streets. So the homeless community needs more education about the use of Narcan and where can be accessible for them to get it. So having in bars will be that great idea for them to come and access for that.
And so, talk about fentanyl a little bit, and what is fentanyl and how has fentanyl changed the conversation around overdose and drugs?
There you go.
So that's a great question, and that's part of the reason why I started doing what I am currently doing, is because, if you, as our friend Kristen Marshall would say, if you are at 6th and Market, which has been referenced a few times today already,
including purchasing fentanyl there, I believe.
Yes. If you're like in that general area, if you're in the neighborhood and you encounter someone overdosing and you scream for Narcan, guaranteed a dozen people are going to come running. The reason why I decided to do what I'm doing at the nightclub is not because I'm the expert. It's not because I know something that nobody else knows. The people in the Tenderloin neighborhood where Carla's working, the people on 6th Street, the people along Market Street have probably reversed more overdoses with Narcan than EMTs in the city, to be honest. And so they're up to stuff. Like, they get it. They're the experts. The reason why I started doing this in the nightclubs is because I realized that there was kind of a gap of understanding with that particular community, and because it hasn't historically affected them in the same way. People aren't using opioids in the club in the same way. You know, if we're talking about opioid overdoses specifically, but with fentanyl, just to bring it back, because fentanyl is in everything, and because, you know, you don't know what you're getting if you're purchasing drugs in the city or anywhere else for that matter, these accidents are starting to happen. We're seeing them happen in places where they had historically not happened before. And it's with this population of people who mean well, but don't know because they've never had to before. And that's kind of why I decided to start doing this. So it's just to, you know, talk to a new demographic, not because there aren't other people in the city already doing this important work, but I just wanted to bring this to a new population.
And so what is the role of fentanyl test strips? I see Carla's got a fentanyl test strip packet.
So fentanyl test strips, you know, if Narcan is something to you know, reverse an overdose, a fentanyl test strip will ideally prevent it from happening in the first place, right? If we're working with people who are like weekend warriors, people who are at the nightclubs, people who are like dipping into little baggies with their pinky nail, you know what I mean? Like, these folks are not, you know, the historical population of injection drug users necessarily, right? With fentanyl test strips, you know, you just need a little sample, and they're really sensitive, and you can tell, it can tell you whether or not there's fentanyl in the substance that you purchased, right? You know, but of course this is only really useful for when someone, like, let's say if I go and purchase some cocaine or some ketamine or something that's fun for the weekend for me and my girls, you know what I mean? It wouldn't work really if I was going out and buying fentanyl, because I think you mentioned earlier, I know that there's fentanyl in my fentanyl.
Great, yes.
That was Laura's joke.
It was, and I get that from my coworker, Ro. And, you know, it's the conversation is often about sort of contamination of the drug supply, and, you know, in part because one of the things that makes fentanyl very different from the heroin or opioid pills that people were previously using. And fentanyl's been around for ages. I mean, it's a pharmaceutical drug that is used for anesthesia. It's used in hospitals. It's used for pain relief. But what we're talking about now is illicitly manufactured fentanyl. And here's a quick lesson in drug policy. But in the drug policy world, there's what's called the Iron Law of Prohibition that says when you prohibit something that creates these economic pressures towards making something stronger and stronger and smaller in volume. If you think about alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, people went from drinking beer to drinking, you know, bathtub gin, to drinking liquor in bottles that could be smuggled in. No one was smuggling in, you know, barrels of beer because the economic forces say, bring in something stronger, make something stronger. And that's essentially how we've gotten illicitly manufactured fentanyl. And so it ends up, you know, certainly people are purchasing and using it as opioid. And that's what's happening in a lot of what you see in the street use of fentanyl in San Francisco right now. But also because people may be buying and selling fentanyl at the same time that they're buying and selling cocaine or meth or other substances, and cross-contamination happens. They're using the same scales, same baggies, whatever. You end up with very small trace amounts of fentanyl in other substances like ketamine, like cocaine. And because fentanyl is so powerful, especially for people who don't regularly use opioids, a very small amount can in fact be fatal. So it's less that it's being intentionally contaminated and more that it's accidental, but it is dangerous nonetheless. And that's why people who aren't necessarily knowingly purchasing or using fentanyl are vulnerable to a fentanyl overdose. So this is an audience of folks in the nightlife industry, run venues, work in venues, and so on. What is it that you would like them to know about overdose and naloxone and harm reduction? what would you like them to be doing?
That an overdose can happen at any time. And that it's 100% preventable, like you were saying earlier. And that's, I guess, kind of it. I don't know. I don't really have anything else to add. You put it so eloquently.
All right. So we are going to ask for a live demonstration of, you're not on the Princess stage, you're here in a daytime conference room, but walk us through the training that you give a Princess audience.
Thanks so
Pretty
much.
please.
Thank you. Yes, I'll try to keep it brief. You know I'm verbose. Sure, yeah. So I'm going to just do this like I do at the club. I'm standing. Hi, I'm a drag queen. I'm here. So we're just going to keep that energy going. I know it's been a long conference. I wasn't even here for the whole thing, but you all look like you've been here for a hot minute. So how many of you, I just want to get a kind of a temperature check. How many of you are club owners, bar owners, business owners, or management or such, right? Okay. So how many of you before today were familiar with this topic? Okay, all right. Go San Francisco. That's one thing that's useful about being notorious for being like a drug den of the world or whatever, is that everybody knows what's going on. So basically what this is about, you know, we already discussed kind of like the prefacing of like how fentanyl is getting into these non-opioid substances, and I did discuss already how it is getting into, how it's affecting a population that had historically not been seeing it in the same way, right? So I do this again, right, at every single Saturday night at the club, ideally for people who had never heard this before, right? And then I tell them if they heard it before, for the week before, then they just can go to the bar and get a drink or something. I don't really care. So, how to use Narcan. Woohoo! Step by step, I made it easy for you. So Narcan is I give away nasal spray. However, you know, that's not the only form. There's also injectables as well. Narcan is the brand name for Naloxone. Naloxone is an opioid antagonist for reversing an overdose. It literally just turns the pleasure center in your brain off so that no more opioids can come in and cause the whole body to shut down, right? And so the first thing what we want to do is we want to check for an overdose. So there can be a lot of people in bars and clubs who look distressed, right? And so an overdose is kind of a specific thing. It is specific to opioids. Narcan will not work on other drug types such as GHB, which is a concern in gay clubs, uppers, stimulants, things like ketamine. It won't work for that stuff. It's only for opioids, right? So in the event of an overdose, a person will be non-responsive. They will be not breathing, and what that looks like is it looks like something out of a movie. If you've never seen somebody overdosing, I'm glad. I hope it stays that way, but it's actually really alarming and scary looking, right? So if a person is overdosing, if they're dark-skinned, their skin tone will be an ashy gray color and their lips will be purple. If they're lighter-skinned, their skin tone will be like sheet white, like a ghost, and their lips will be blue. Either way, the lip color will be darker than the skin color. So that's something to look for. You're calling their name, you're shouting them, you're pushing them, you're like tickling them, nothing's working, right? They're just not non-responsive and they're not breathing. And so congratulations, you got an overdose. Woohoo! So step 2, call 911. Point to your nearest friend with a smartphone, who should be literally all of you. You there, Carla, please call 911. Carla says, I'm on it. She's on it. Carla's capable. She knows this shit. While Carla's doing that, you get to work, baby. So what you do, you give them Narcan. Yay! So how many of you have ever seen the nasal spray before? You've seen this before? So we can pass this around if anyone wants to see this, or you can come up afterward if you wanted to, yeah, just to look at it. It's really easy. If you've used Flonase for allergy season, you can use this shit. So all you do is you literally stick it up the person's nostril and push the button thing all the way up, and that's it. It's like that easy. It's like takes 1 second. It's really easy to get out of the packaging. It's designed for urgency, right? So the thing with Narcan, the nasal spray specifically, it takes 2 to 5 minutes to work. When someone's overdosing and not breathing, 5 minutes is a long time. It'll be the longest 5 minutes of your life. It's very scary. So what you're going to do in the meantime is give them rescue breaths, or as I like to say, give me life, baby. So, doing rescue breathing, relatively simple. How many of you have done CPR or are CPR certified, right? So it's the same thing. It's minus the chest compressions. Chest compressions is usually the first thing that people want to do. It's so ingrained in our culture to do chest compressions. We think it'll help. I've seen people jump on people overdosing and fighting over the right way to give them the chest compressions when that actually isn't fucking doing anything. At best, you'll waste time, and at worst, you'll break their ribs. And guess what? They're still overdosing. So you just want to give them rescue breathing. So have them flat on their back, lifting their chin up, pinch the nose, and then give them one regular-sized breath every 5 seconds or so. Right? You don't need to be a hero or, overly exert yourself, because you will not be useful if you run out of air after 30 seconds of intense breathing, right? So ideally, they should wake up. This should work. After 5 minutes, if it hasn't worked and they're still not coming around, use another dose. Each box comes with 2 doses. Each dose is 4 milligrams. And then at some point during this, either they will wake up and live to party another day. This is when you cheer, yay! Or help will arrive, because Carla, my friend, already called emergency services. Right? And something that I also like to remind people, especially in the club setting, is that in most states there is a Good Samaritan law. In California is no different. So California is no different. What that means is if me and Carla are partying, and if I overdose, and Carla is working in good faith to save my life, even if Carla is also partying, doing something, engaging in illicit activities, she's protected by the Good Samaritan law. So just kind of think about that when you're considering liability for your business, right? You're acting in good faith to save someone's life. There's nothing you can do wrong. Narcan also has no negative effect. If someone hit me with 10 doses of Narcan at this moment, it will literally do nothing except for ruin my high. You're supposed to laugh. In any case, yeah, that's kind of it, right? So does anyone have any questions about how Narcan is used or anything like that? I think I'm speaking too close to the mic. Sorry, I'll do it like this far away.
When you're performing rescue breaths, there's no chance of you contacting any fentanyl or anything like that yourself?
That is such a good question. That came up recently when I was doing this at a bar, and one of the bartenders pointed this out. For what it's worth, and it would be relevant for, if somebody is using cocaine or something and they're putting it in their mouth, or it's going from the nasal cavity down their throat, right? I've never heard of that really happening.
Yeah, there are a lot of myths and misinformation about fentanyl, and one of them is that you can overdose from touching it or being in a room with it or breathing it. And that, let me be the first to tell you, that is absolutely not the case. You can't overdose from touching fentanyl. There's been a rash of law enforcement officers having panic attacks or anxiety attacks as a result of coming into contact with fentanyl, but none of them actually had overdoses. They were not unconscious, but they were having an elevated heart rate, for example, which is sort of the opposite of an overdose. So there's definitely a myth out there, but no, you can't, you will not get high from reversing an overdose. You will not overdose from reversing an overdose. You can touch someone's body, you can touch their drugs, and you're not going to overdose. Fentanyl is actually very difficult to get across the skin barrier, and that's why fentanyl patches that are used for pain management have a particular chemical compound that enables it to get across the skin, because otherwise it won't.
Thanks for that clarification, Laura.
And it's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it.
Mm-hmm. I think I saw another question over here. The question was, how can venues get their hands on Narcan? Did everyone get one of these sheets that is similar to what is on the screen.
And Dylan has some back there, so he can hand those out. So we have a special guest here today. Eileen Loughran from the San Francisco Department of Public Health with Community Behavioral Health Services is here, standing over there. And she has with her quite a few boxes of naloxone. So we encourage all of you, when this presentation is over, Eileen does not want to have to carry all those boxes back to her office. So please take some off of her hands. But you know, the information that's on the back of that flyer, you know, here in San Francisco, individuals can get free naloxone, nasal Narcan, and fentanyl test strips at the Department of Public Health Pharmacy at 1380 Howard Street. You can just walk in, they'll provide training, they'll give you free test strips, and they'll give you free naloxone. So that is sufficient for individuals. If you are interested in stocking more, or you're going through more than that, or you've got several venues, talk to Eileen, and she will work something out with you to ensure that you have the naloxone that you need on hand in your venues. So after this is over, go talk to Eileen, and she's the overdose expert for the San Francisco Department of Public Health. So if you have questions about the city's response, naloxone, fentanyl test strips, all of that, she's the point person. She's also a longtime bar staff person and entertainment and nightlife aficionado. So she fits right in here.
I feel like that's a very San Francisco thing. You know, all of us doing, like, I also work in government shit, and it's expensive here. I gotta have a side hustle, come on. Benefits are nice, though. Is there another question? Do we have time for one more?
Mm-hmm.
I'm wearing my glasses, I can see you. No? All right, well, that's it for me. Thank you so much. I'm Cochina Rude.
And so where can people come see you?
People can see me every single Saturday night at Oasis, baby. Woohoo! It is the premier gay nightclub in South of Market neighborhood, owned by Darcy Drollinger, who I believe was here earlier. So yeah, every Saturday night, the show is from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Hire a sitter, come out. It's a lot of fun, I promise.
Carla, anything you want to promote?
Well, you can see me at I'm Charlie's Lounge, Fridays and Saturdays, and showtime is 10 o'clock, and it's over by 12 o'clock.
Would it make sense for Carla to mention the Trans Pilot Program?
Yeah, Carla, do you want to talk about the Trans Pilot Program and what it's doing?
Oh, well, we are reaching, of course, transgenders in the city of San Francisco, basically African Americans. That's our target program, but we see Latinas, like I'm Latina, I'm part of the Latino team. And we provide lunches, very few kind of amount of lunches on the Civic Center area, the Civic Center Inn area that is on Ellis and Polk. And we are assisting also the people that live on the tents in that area too, providing some lunches for them. And we were passing masks during the COVID times and trying to educate people about how to learn how to live isolated from the war, and at the same time, kind of to be active on educating themselves to do something better for the future. And of course, we work with a lot of people that has been experiencing overdose of fentanyl. The crystal meth is one of the biggest issues in the transgender community in San Francisco. So many of the girls has been over the overdoses part. So we training on the use of Narcan. And basically we give referrals. There is nothing to do in this city during the COVID, you know, besides give referrals over the Zoom or wherever media. So basically we have to educate and how to use the Zoom, because you know that the transgender community is not too accessible to education about the tech. situation in the area. So we try to educate them on how to use the phone, how to use the Zoom application, and then it has been working very good because people now they have access to that, and at the same time we link it to the health services that they can get. So that's been helpful for all of them to learn how to use the phone. Is very important, I think, for everybody to learn how to use the phone in the right way. Yeah. So it's basically what we're doing on the, and we, of course, we're still passing condoms for the other pandemic that we have on the 70s, 80s, that was the HIV. So we're still addressing that issue with our community.
So most recently, their supervisor, Tracy, had noticed kind of what we had been doing at Princess, and you started to use it as a model with the Trans Pilot program. So now, individuals such as Carla, who are part of the Transgender Pilot program,
and
Bianca Simone, who I believe was also here earlier, they are now also being paid money to go out into the communities with their own communities and do education around overdose prevention and distribute Narcan. So yeah, it's a kind of a cute little feather in my cap, I will say. Yeah.
A little extra, like you say. Yes, it's good.
A little
It's
extra.
very good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, please join me in thanking our presenters for this panel. Thank you.
We'll be over there if you have any questions. Yes. Thank you.
Great. Back to you, Maggie. Go for it.
All right, everyone, we have come to the final item in today's presentations. If you could all help me welcome Commissioner Dory Camino to the front, that would be fantastic. She's our Vice President. She's going to wrap it up.
Okay. I want to thank my fellow Commissioner Laura Thomas and Cucina Rude and Carla Kleins for that very informative session. And like some of the other speakers said earlier, coming up after like Mayor Breed and Assembly Member Matt Haney, coming up after Cucina Rude, it's kind of hard. But with that said, we just want to thank everybody who came out today. We had a live session of the Fun Police. That banter between Sharky and Ben is just like everything. When you listen to it in your headphones, it's like the best friends in your head. You're literally watching it happen here. So thank you to Commissioner Laguana, Ben Blyman, and then also the city economist, Ted Egan. We also had Katie Tang from the Office of Small Business. We had Ben Van Houten, AKA The Beard, okay? And also to, our policymakers. We thank Assemblymember Matt Haney and Mayor London Breed, and of course, City Administrator Carmen Hsu. So the one thing, though, that is most important is that we thank you. The last 3 years have been incredibly hard, and you guys have been on the front lines. What I've heard tonight is how essential each of you have been and will be in helping restore our economy at this point. And, you create that sense of belonging, you create that sense of safety, that sense of community in your dance floors, your stadiums, your nightclubs, your restaurants, your bars. And we can't do this without you. If we had the opportunity to take a shot every time someone said the word fun tonight or this afternoon, we would be so fucked up. So I think we've all been charged with bringing fun back to the city, but at the end of the day, we know how hard it's been in general in the last 3 years and what we've been struggling through. So, I come from a very religious family, and one thing I do want to say is, I pray for all of us at this point, that we continue to have our safety, our health, and just the endurance to keep going. So, I don't want to bring up any downer things, but, it's just been hard, and I just want us all to acknowledge that, and, let's just pray for our mental health and our stamina to keep going. But, I do think that my colleague, Ben Blyman, should have the last word.
She asked me to speak. I did not want to. I can't say anything better than Dory just said, except for one thing I just wanted to add, which is that we are really fortunate to have a couple major leaders in the city of San Francisco with our mayor and our assembly member Haney, who are so incredibly pro nightlife and understand how important we are to the community. And it, first of all, was not always like that. With them it was, but with previous people it was not. And it does not always mean that this is going to be there. And so you are all here today participating